Oh, hello there. Yes, well, it's a short week, but we know that a week is a long time in politics, so I imagine that a short week is still quite a long time in politics. Anyway, leaving that aside, yes, news yesterday that Israeli tanks were rolling into Rafah to be met, no doubt, with the massed arms of the Palestinians, probably legs and other amputated bits anyway. I don't know, it's just left a fairly sour taste in my and I'm sure lots of other people's mouths, because that was the main crossing that humanitarian aid was going to go into. So we'll see exactly what the British government doesn't do about that. The British media, of course, have maintained their usual stance on this, which is October the 7th. So whatever happens, it's October the 7th. And here we are, over 6 months down the line, and it's still October the 7th because October the 7th. And it really was fully on display yesterday with Julia Hartley Brewer of Talk TV, or is it Talk just on the internet now before it's shut down? Not really quite sure. Anyway, in her show yesterday, which they actually had the audacity to put up a clip on their channel on YouTube, link down below. Please do have a look at it. It's astoundingly distasteful, whereby Julia just indulges in her usual patronising young people thing that she does, because Julia doesn't really like anyone that isn't like her. They have to be exactly the same like her, otherwise she was dismissive of them, even though she never really applies these things across the board. And she had various problems with young people, students in the UK protesting about Gaza and wanting the universities to disinvest. And she came out with a number of different reasons with her guest, who was an expat from who cares where, really. Anyway, yeah. First of all, her big problem was the fact that these events were happening at Oxbridge, right? Okay, which of course is a bad thing, because only posh kids go to Oxbridge, like Julia Hartley Brewer, and almost all of the political guests that she interviews, who presumably just on that basis shouldn't be given the time of day, because they're posh kids. And yes, apparently they were wearing masks, and she thought that was funny or strange and a bit dangerous at the same time. Couldn't really make up her mind about that. But do they need to be anonymous? And the answer is, well, yeah, potentially they do, because various academics have been getting into trouble recently about making remarks which might be considered anti-Zionist. And the problem for Julia, and to a certain extent other people in the media, the free speech absolutists that they are, is that actually being anti-Zionist is a protected characteristic. So that might be interesting in future. Yeah, she said that the young people had posh demands, which presumably is for caviar. No, their demands were posh, she said in some way, which is a really intriguing notion. I think what she meant was she was struggling with the idea that they have demands, but if you engage in protest, then by definition you have demands, and they may or may not be class-based. I'm not really quite sure, but it's strange that Julia can't really get her head around that. Yeah, she took great delight in how hilarious it was that students were going on a hunger strike, because, some of them are quite fat, and tee-hee, they might need to lose weight. Tee-hee, because that's hilarious, because, other people in the past who've gone on hunger strike are equally funny. I just always laugh at the suffragettes being force-fed. I just find that just hilarious. Apparently, yes, apparently they've got arts and crafts sessions, which is very bad, because young people mustn't do arts and crafts sessions, because oh god, that would be horrible. Think about macrame. At the same time, young people always have their noses in phones, which is bad, and they should take up a hobby like I suppose macrame, really, mustn't they? Yes. And they're camping, which both her and her spaddy guest could think of nothing worse. And that meets irony at so many different points, because, of course, lots of people in Gaza are forced to live in tents because, their houses have been utterly destroyed. Still, it's a laugh, innit, eh? No. Her basic problem, though, of course, intrinsically, is that these people are kids. I mean, they are, a lot of them, in their early 20s encounter adults and have a vote like her. But they're way too young to have an opinion. You can't have an opinion until you're Julia's age, which is good because I think I'm actually older than hers. Presumably, therefore, I know better than her. Yes, she said that most of them don't know what they're protesting about, and she would definitely make it a rule that people have to know an awful lot about what they're protesting about before they go protesting, which I think is personally a brilliant idea, because that really will set the cat amongst the pigeons with Tommy Robinson the next time he's at the Cenotaph. Yeah, I mean, getting most of those types to even sort of fill in a basic questionnaire with multiple choice questions really would be intriguing, but I think it's a great idea personally of hers. Obviously, she then went into stereotypes about the fact that none of the students are called into her programme because it was 11:10 a.m. and it's too early because they're all asleep, because they're young people, because they're crap, because they're young people, which is hilarious. But of course, I mean, you have to say, well, okay, did they call in though? But you wouldn't allow them because that's not. Unlike, she then took a call from a woman who said that the young people were apologists for Hamas, which is the sort of ongoing line about anybody that you can disagree with. Okay, you're an apologist for. I'm an apologist for, well, anything you fancy, I suppose, but as a teacher. But this woman was saying that the young people are apologists for Hamas, despite the fact that if you actually speak to some of them, which of course nobody is going to do because that would be ridiculous because they're just kids and, you know, they're too posh and all that stuff. But that they're not really saying anything about Hamas. What they're saying is about the universities being tied into the arms trade and various apartheid states like Israel. But I guess that's just too complicated. It's like the standard shibboleth of do you condemn Hamas? I remember, you know, when like people like Jacob Rees-Mogg would forever come out with that when they're interviewing people. And I always used to think, well, if you go on a show, what you need to do is say, well, would it make any difference? Let's test it. And then to sort of suggest that you then condemn Hamas and, you know, everyone's silent for a few minutes and see if you can still hear gunfire, because that probably might be the way that one works. Or is that just me being facetious at that point and having a laugh? Maybe, Julia, but at least that's vaguely funny. Yeah. And then they had a guy called Daniel on, who was a student, I think at Newcastle or one of those, and yeah, he actually made some very sensible and sort of centrist view things, but Julia had to shoot him down in flames because he said that he blamed October the 7th on Netanyahu, and Julia wasn't going to have any of that because it was only Hamas's thought, and Hamas are to blame, and the Palestinians are to blame for Hamas, and they need to get rid of Hamas, and then when they got rid of Hamas, then maybe we can do something about being okay with them, like, I don't know, laughing at them for being intense or something. Yes, and that was the end of the clip. But say, please do have a look at it. It's really quite astounding, mainly because the level of condescension is way off the scale. I mean, it makes me look like a very, very mere amateur, and I can be really condescending, like now, really condescending. Simply because I've been a teacher for years, it does make you very condescending. Anyway, but just astounding that this stuff goes out as supposed political mainstream thought. And someone at Talk TV thought it was entirely worthwhile posting it up as relevant to the station. But what have I learnt? Well, I've learnt that Julia applies very, very different standards. I mean, if we're not going to listen to posh people, that rules out almost everybody in mainstream politics, and certainly anything to do with the royal family. I mean, they're just posh people making demands, aren't they? Yeah? I mean, I can't believe they're out of bed that early in the morning. It's not like they've got any work to do, is it? Yeah, and them surgeons, for example, just posh kids. Why do they wear masks all the time? Yeah, Jesus. Anyway, it's just an excuse to bunk off lectures. Anyway, Jesus. I don't know. It's so utterly, utterly shallow and at the same time horrific, because these people are laughing whilst tanks make sure that no aid can get to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. That's a laugh, isn't it? No. Anyway, do try and have a good day if you can. The sun is out, and at least here the weather doesn't come with shrapnel. Anyway, do enjoy the day if you can.